Weimar Germany to Waco, Texas, cults, large and small, have been effective at taking rational, considerate human beings and making them do unspeakable things. Some started with the pretense of doing good, and most remained dormant for decades before finally erupting in mayhem. This anxiety is exploited by Ari Aster in his mind-bending Midsommar, a new folk horror from A24 Productions that tries hard to shock, disorientate, and disgust audiences. If anything, it proves that there is often nothing more horrifying than the benign, looked at with a tilted head. The film starts in the United States and focuses on a college student called Danny, played masterfully by Florence Pugh, who becomes traumatized after a series of unfortunate events and decides to travel to Sweden with her boyfriend and his anthropologist friends. When they get there, they are accosted by the unrelenting summer sun and an equally affable-looking group of commune members, dressed in white, wearing crowns made of flowers. These folks were celebrating a special pagan midsummer festival, and the American students were there to participate. In technical terms, Midsommar was a marvel to behold. The editing was consistently slick and suited the moods the film was trying to convey. The cinematography by Paweł Pogorzelski was often breathtaking. The camera either hovered above sets like a circling raven or mingled in the crowds, close to the ground, giving us some exhilarating point-of-view shots. The bipolar score from The Haxan Cloak was effective in establishing a sense of dread, from melodic humming to menacing orchestral numbers, with ever-escalating chords. The film was smothered with contrasting auditory elements that made inane incidents seem jarring and bizarre. All these factors are brought together deftly by Aster, whose command was almost Kubrickian in its competence. Overall, the performances in this film were decent. In particular, the actress who played Danny brought a lot of realism and warmth to a challenging, and at times, ludicrous role. The Swedes, as a cohort, were believably bizarre. However, there were times when both parties felt like a collection of clichés, rather than multifaceted human beings. The character played by Will Poulter was especially cringeworthy, as a caricature of a crude American, who garnered many laughs at my screening, for the simple fact of being crude, and American. My main gripe with this film settles around its characterizations, i.e. the characters did not follow normal human impulses. For instance, as the Swedes regularly hugged each other for uncomfortable lengths of time, and called each other brother, sister, or family in an unambiguously cultish effect, a sensible human would have excused themselves, grabbed their bags and run. The characters of this film opt to do drugs with them instead. They act as the script told them to act a certain way, not following any logical sense. When a character's motivations, actions or interactions do not adhere to the rubrics of the world around us, it becomes harder to empathize with their struggles or to suspend our disbelief. You can say it was the drugs or the social pressure that swayed the film's characters to make the poor decisions they made. I tend to lean on the possibility that this film was clumsily written. I say this not only because of the improbable characterizations, but because of its length. It's a 2.5-hour movie that had a 1.5-hour narrative that was stretched out till it became nauseating and repetitive. I'm not saying that if you chopped off an hour it would work better, it's just that there was quite a lot of dead air in between the chaos. Speaking of chaos, this film might be too much for most audiences to handle. It is advertised as a horror movie, but I wouldn't say I was ever truly horrified, though I was repulsed at several points. From graphic violence to pervasive nudity and indescribable depravity, this film devolves into an almost unbearable mess in the third act. The fact that all of this occurs in the bright Swedish sunlight makes the acts even more unsettling to participate. As a study, in contrast, this film is a triumph. A joint US and Swedish production, this film is a hybrid of the two styles, hyper-stylized and bizarrely humorous. It's an unsettling mix that threatens to pull audiences out of this experience. However, these juxtapositions between the mundane and inexplicable create something wholly unique that you must see to believe. It is certainly one of the strangest films of this decade, and on a superficial level, it is a very well-constructed film, there is no denying that. But its length, bizarre content and narrative improbability make it a hard film to endorse. For fans of surreal folk horror and Ari Aster, this film can be intensely rewarding, but would I recommend it to someone else? No, probably not.